see a lot in the hip-hop community. I mean, hip-hop community is not shy of collaboration. And, some of the people in the rock community, they do it, but it's almost like, got them crooked vultures and all that kind of thing, but it's not as commonplace as it is in the hip-hop community. I think it's a really good, healthy thing for rock music.
Do you think it's an ego thing?
I don't know. Yeah, perhaps it is. Perhaps it's a fear thing more than anything. It's a fear thing, giving up that kind of control and giving up control, or maybe I'm not even thinking about it, maybe being so fucking self-indulgent you wouldn't even think about working with anybody else.
I wonder sometimes if it has something to do with, even in the music industry, the labels. I was talking to Maria from In This Moment the other day. She was supposed to collaborate on a song on the new album with Five Finger Death Punch, and both record labels said, no, we're not allowing you to do that.
No, that's bad for them, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to be hurt. I mean, if we've got a healthy community, everybody's going to benefit from it.
Right. Well, and in this, and you alluded to this a moment ago, in this new sort of industry with music and everything, between where the industry itself is going and piracy and whatnot, it really has become sort of a digital thing, whereas 10, 15, 20 years ago, you could put out an album and you could have half the album be really strong and the other half be and people are going to go buy the record and everything. Now, you can't afford not to have every song be a worthwhile project, because people just aren't going to buy it. They'll just go buy the songs they want.
Yeah, precisely. That's the whole thing. The album's been cannibalized, especially with iTunes, the format. We can go and basically pick and choose what you want. Some songs never even get heard, or they get heard for 30 seconds, So there's your great artistic. It's sad to see a band like Alice in Chains go out. I mean, they sold 500,000 records, but, it cost them over $1 million to do it. They've got Elton John on it, and it's already done. And that record could have been spread out over a period of a year. Could have been done in bite-sized chunks, and maybe would have had a lot more longevity, would have been cheaper to make, and probably would have been healthier for all concerned. And and I don't know. It's an argument that I've had put towards me about, there's still validity in albums, and I go, yeah, if you've written a fucking masterwork.
Right.
If you've written something really amazing and you have a burning desire to drop an album, you've got it, you've done it, it's a great piece of work, then yeah, sure, by all means, go do it. But if you're really in a place where you kind of like touring and writing at different times, then why not release as you go? I think it's a great format to really. I think it's great for an artist. I mean, just think about from the perspective, like you put out songs, you can see what you see what your audience like, what they don't like, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. It's just great insight. You get to try things out, maybe release things you would never release on an album. Maybe you feel like doing a different style of track, something cinematic or soundtracky or whatever. You can put it out standalone.
Right. You're not stuck in a certain mold. How many times we heard that? Well, I wrote this track for this album, but it really didn't fit the feel of the album. Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're sitting on top of like 30 or 40 songs, half finished, three-quarters finished, they languish there, and then you have to go through this process of editing. Like you've got a deadline to hit, and you start trying to edit and go through all these songs to find the album. And the album isn't really there because it's all bits and pieces of things that aren't even finished. So, I mean, like the Boris thing was done in 5 days.
Wow, that's incredible.
I mean, they put that together I think they put that together fairly quickly, like in a couple of weeks, the music. And then for me to do, I mean, obviously behind the scenes I was, finding the character and the persona of the song from a lyrical standpoint, melodic standpoint, the emotive standpoint. But once I got in the studio, it was 5 days of recording. And there's some overdubs that were played, some edits, some mixing. And so it was a relatively, quick process. And I think that the project's going to have more longevity because we are releasing it like this. So this one, I think, is going to really capture people's imaginations. So then there'll be another project, and then maybe at the end of it all, we'll release it all as a compiled work.
I think, from what I've listened to it so far, and, it's always one of those things you want to listen to it quite a bit before you really say this is how I feel. But at first listen, you've got your voice, which I sort of talked about at the outset, that's really just sort of, it's an instrument unto itself that's unique to our industry, against their sort of, they like to do stuff very raw. I mean, when they record, they do it analog.
Yes.
And I think the juxtaposition between the two is really striking.
Cool.
I think you guys did a great job there. And without stepping too far away from Boris for a moment, I did want to ask you, since we're talking about collaborations, How did the whole thing come about with doing Ghost on Slash's record?
With Slash?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Slash was putting together his solo album, and obviously I've known Slash for many years, so I was just on his list of singers that he wanted to work with, and a lot of it had already been kind of recorded. Like I think I was kind of like one of the last singers to come in, but so I don't know whether I got one of the choicest tracks, but it's Slash. When Slash calls, I'm like, okay, he's a friend, so I went in and did it. It was a different experience from the Boris thing, obviously, because Slash has a very different style of writing and performing, and so I tried to write something with him in mind, with the sentiment of what I thought was the right feeling for that song and what that song spoke to me, and it's just a different process. I mean, the Boris stuff is far more layered and textured and dramatic and theatrical in that sense, and maybe goes a bit deeper. Whereas the Slash stuff is really about Slash. I mean, he's a virtuoso player, so the song is structured around his guitar. So you know what I mean? Where the Boris material was written for a singer, Slash's song was written really for a guitar player.
Again, when you come in and sing it, you sort of, it sounds like a cult song, because not just because your voice is so identifiable, but like I said before, it really is just, it's hard to explain what I mean, but it just sort of takes on a life of its own, and you bring that to every song that you do. So.
Cool, thank you.
Before we get out of here, one thing I heard a rumor, and I'm trying to figure out how you're going to do this, being out on tour with the Cult this summer, that while Boris is doing their dates, and I think you're, over in Europe, and their dates are over in the U.S., aren't they?
No, they actually, they're going to be in the United States the last week of August and the first week of September, and I'll be back by then.
Oh, okay. So there is some rumor that you may show up at a few of those events?
No, we're going to play in New York together on September 7th.
Definitively New York. Any others that you might show up at, or?
Not right now. No,
gotcha.
No discussion. I mean, pretty much, I think that we did one song in Australia. We did Magical Child in Australia.
Right.
But that just so happened that I was there at the time at the shows. I was visiting in Australia, so I got to see them 2 nights there and perform one of the nights. But this is basically Alta. It's Son and Boris together to play Alta. And the special guest is BXI,
right.
And so I'm pretty excited about that. It's going to be amazing.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to talk with me about the whole BXI project and Boris and everything. It's been absolutely wonderful. Before we get out of here, sort of my question of the week, I'm sort of asking everybody, and if you had a chance to sit down for an evening with a friend or a couple of friends, past, present, I shouldn't say friends, people that you've never really had a chance to sit down with, past, present, dead, alive, who would you spend an evening talking with?
Wow. What, one person?
One person, 2 or 3 people, the whole dinner of 5 thing.
Wow. I mean, I'd love to sit down with Shakespeare. That'd be amazing. Pablo Picasso. Wow. Beethoven. Mozart. Michelangelo.
All within the arts realm, huh?
Yeah. Stanley Kubrick, for sure. Akira Kurosawa.
Absolutely. Amazing people. Great choices all.
The Buddha. Dhamma Buddha. That'd be amazing. I mean, I'd love to sit down and have dinner with Dalai Lama. That'd be amazing too. Living people. I mean, living people. Dalai Lama, Keith Richards, Neil Young, David Bowie. I've met Bowie a few times, but I'd love to sit and have dinner with him as well. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to sit down with. It'd be quite amazing to sit down with someone like Sitting Bull or any of the Great Plains Chiefs would be pretty amazing as well. Red Cloud or...
I knew it would be an intriguing answer. Not one person that you mentioned came up in anybody else's answer over this last week or two. Ian Astbury of The Cult, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with Metalholic and Mojo Radio. We certainly appreciate it. We look forward to the album coming out and getting a chance to see and hear you perform with the band.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.